Now we're about to begin with the first session, but let me take this opportunity to introduce myself to all of you and also to welcome all of you here. Now the word Fintech is short for financial technologies. In the broader sense, it is any financial technology that is at the back end of a financial institution. But in the more narrower sense of terms, it is the startups that are disrupting the financial industrial landscape. Mobile payments, asset management, the way we trade, the way we insure ourselves, the way we do crowdfunding. Now, we're all going to look back in 2020 and wonder what a strange year it was. That is for one. But for two also, it was the year that very rapidly brought about a revolution in our industry. It changed the way we communicate, the way we go to office, the way we don't go to office, the way we do our payments, insure ourselves, trade, stock, everything. So Fintech is not just a buzzword. It is, for most of us, a business opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, I want all of you to put your hands together and join me in opening the 6th edition of the world's largest Fintech festival, Global Fintech Fest. Can we please have a huge round of applause? Now, all of us together over here, this showcases our commitment for a financial future that is resilient, responsible, and most importantly, inclusive. We thank the Payment Council of India, PCI, the National Payments Corporation of India, and the Fintech Convergence Council, FCC, for their tireless effort in organizing this conference. Our gratitude also extends to Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Department of Financial Services, Ministry of Finance, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, NEST Division, Ministry of External Affairs, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Niti Aayog, UIDAI, DPIIT Startup India, Reserve Bank of India, RBI, Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, IRDAI, International Financial Services Centers Authority, IFSCA. GFF'25 is organized by NPCI, PCI, and FCC, co-powered by Google Pay and PhonePe, technology partner Perfios, brought to you by HDFC, State Bank of India, Punjab National Bank, Bank of Baroda, and Amazon Pay. Associate partners Razorpay, Paytm, and Visa. Consent partner NeoCred, and payment enabler Lyra Network. If I had to put Fintech in one word, I would go for the word innovation, because that is what we have seen in the course of these last 5 odd years. Innovation in Fintech is something that we have seen and we all know about. But what beholds the future of Fintech? That is exactly what GFF 2025 is going to be about. We have a very powerful theme this year. It is about empowering finance for a better world, powered by artificial intelligence. We are going to discuss in this theme how artificial intelligence will combine with human insights and truly shape the future of finance. Now, I'm sure that all of you have already downloaded the GFF app. In the app, there is an extremely interesting feature. This is the GFF GPT. Here, you can ask GFF GPT about everything from the sessions to the speakers to the side events that are happening. You can have a communication then and there. But apart from that, I also want all of you to listen to me very, very carefully. See, I'm going to start with the first session now. And towards the end of the session, we are going to open the Q&A. Now, for that Q&A, I want all of you to be using the GFF app. During the session, if you have absolutely any question, You have to use the app and the moderator will pick your questions. What you have to do is that in the Global Fintech Fest app, go to the Agenda tab, select the session you are attending, which is this session, scroll down and tap on the live Q&A button. Type your question and it will reach directly to the moderator. Needless to say, ensure that your question is respectful and appropriate for this event. Without much further ado, I am going to go and open the first session for today. We are discussing FinTech futures, sandboxes, innovation hubs, and policy labs. And for this session, our moderator is Mr. Pablo Londono, Director, Payments, Middle East, Africa, Turkey, Amazon. And our speakers include Mr. Alvinder Singh, Head Monetary Authority of Singapore, Dr. Julian Langer, Policy Officer specializing in AI and Data in Finance, German Federal Ministry of Finance, Mr. Manoj Gyawali, CEO, Nabil Bank, he will be joining us very shortly, and Mr. Sathya, Head of Core Payments, HSBC. I want all of you to please put your hands together and welcome all of our panelists up on stage now.
All right, let's get started. So I'm Pablo Londoño. I'm the Managing Director for Amazon Payment Services for the Middle East, Africa, and Turkey, as mentioned before. It is really a privilege to be here at GFF today, which brings together diverse perspectives on innovation, collaboration, and trust in finance. And as AI and fintechs evolve, regulators and industry have come together to look for ways to collaborate, to help foster innovation in a safe and scalable manner. So we have a distinguished panel of speakers here today, and we will get started with some questions to address what has worked globally and what else we can be working here on in this space in the coming years. So let me begin asking some questions to Mr. Singh. So could you briefly define how the Monetary Authority of Singapore distinguishes between a live regulatory sandbox and an innovation hub, and why that distinction matters?
All right, thanks. No, interesting question and all that things. So we see it as two different concepts. An innovation hub is what an entity establishes to further their innovation life cycle. And why did we think of that, say, a decade ago? So 2015 when we started this journey. Because we realized that institutions, especially financial institutions, if left to their own device, actually you have got plenty of fires you're fighting, plenty of opportunities you're pursuing. But innovation becomes just one of those opportunities. Now, how do you raise it such that you elevate it, such that it's high up in the hierarchy? We needed to come in as a central bank. So we needed to put money where our mouth is and say, you do an innovation hub, you hire people, and you think of this full time, and this innovation hub is integrated to your functions and all. So that is how we looked at innovation hubs. And the beauty of it is we started off, financial institutions were the first few applicants. But today, actually, fintechs itself, they have scaled enough such that now they are establishing their own innovation hubs. So it's a natural life cycle and all. Now, sandboxes, on the other hand, is actually a safe space. Now, in the MAS world, we always tell people, if you want to come to Singapore and operate, the doors are open, our rules are clear, we have more than 1,000 law firms to help you understand our frameworks. Go pursue a full license from day one. Now, where are the instances where you cannot pursue a full license? One is if you have such a novel use case, or two, there is really a regulatory lacuna right now. That is where you come to MAS and say, hey, we need to test this. We need to test this in a safe environment that makes sense, such that eventually I want you as a regulator to regulate me. But after I've completed my testing, after you have shown me, after I have shown you that I can be safe, and after you are assured that I can be safe forever. So that is how we see our regulatory sandbox. And I'm happy to unpack this as this conversation goes about.
Thank you. And Dr. Langer, what defines the European approach to policy experimentation? And how does it shape our response to emerging technologies like AI and digital assets?
Thank you. Thank you for that question, actually, and good morning, and thank you for having me as well, actually. So I'm from the Ministry of Finance in Germany, but I guess I have the European hat on today a bit because, as you might know, financial services law is harmonized in the EU. So when we have sandboxes, we usually have sandboxes on the European level. Maybe the first question, why do we actually need that? And I think it's because policy tends to be very hard, actually. Getting policy right is hard because we might not admit it, but policymakers very often should probably be a little bit more humble in terms of how the world functions. And this is especially true with new financial technologies because they are so fast moving and there's a lot of uncertainty attached to that. And traditionally, I think if we would just regulate this from the start and have a very, without thinking about evidence, actually, this might be very costly. This might be costly for the companies. This might also be costly, this might also actually not fulfill the aims of the policy, so to speak. So I think these regulatory sandboxes or innovation hubs or any kinds of evidence-based learning in that regard actually is a way forward about learning what works without necessarily fully committing to a certain policy at that time yet. And it gives a lot of benefits, actually, to the different players in the market. So for the regulators, we can understand a bit better how the technology works. For the consumers, they can use actually cutting-edge technologies, but can be sure that they have been basically proven. And for the companies also, they actually basically get more assurance with regard to compliance. Now in Europe, this is actually even more of a problem because we have 27 member states, and if we agree on the policy, that takes a lot of time. So these regulatory sandboxes are a way forward of testing the waters with regard to certain technologies. So in the area of digital assets, for example, we have the DLT pilot regime since 2023, where basically certain financial infrastructure market operators are exempted from certain laws if they have applied to such a sandbox, and then they are exempted for a limited amount of time. And then the regulators can actually see, do we want these DLT technology in our financial market infrastructure? And they can actually gather data and gather evidence and see what works. So I think that's a good way forward. Now the adoption has been a little bit limited, which might actually be because while it helps the regulators a lot, it might not necessarily yield a viable market model for the companies. So that's, I think, something that we now need to improve with the regulatory sandboxes that are connected to the AI legislation that we have at the moment. So this is still all ongoing, but the idea there is actually to give also a safe space, so to speak, for small and medium enterprises to experiment with certain high-risk AI systems and let the regulators learn what the problems could be, and at the same time the companies would gain actually assurance that what they do is actually compliant, which helps them also, which reduces uncertainty later on if they bring it to the market. I think I would leave it for as that for now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you both for the interesting perspectives from the regulatory side. Now, if we move a little bit to the industry perspective and the challenges in navigating global complexity, Mr. Ram, HSBC operates under multiple regulatory regimes. how do flexible mechanisms like innovation hubs and policy labs assist a multinational in navigating that immense regulatory complexity and innovating responsibly across borders?
Thank you, Pablo, for the question. Great to be here. It's truly a festival, as if I feel like Gyawali has come early. HSBC as a multinational bank operating in various jurisdictions, obviously our primary aim is to ensure that the local laws are strictly followed and our products and propositions are aligned to that. The Innovation Lab is a great place to start experimenting solutions, whether it is retail solutions that we see through various apps that are currently functional. You can imagine 10 years ago, we participated in one of the earliest sandboxes in UK, looking at how the personal finance proposition is going to be evolved, how we can get better insights. So that was a lab product, and now it is largely a BAU function in many banks across the globe. We were one of the earliest participants in Singapore, along with the MAS guidance, to look at some of the DLT, the distributed ledger technology, as an way to solve cross-border, cross-currency settlements. We recently announced in our engagement in Hong Kong, along with HKMA and a few other participants, to use the tokenized deposit service to make interbank settlements instantly with the use of the fiat currency. So these are some of the examples that, as a multinational bank, we engage at the early stage of the innovation, bring real-life solutions to the market, and thanks to the Sandbox and the Innovation Lab supported by the regulators across the various jurisdictions. The value that we gain as multinational bank is we look at these different use cases across geography that helps us to get better insight as opposed to just confined to one jurisdiction. So all the examples that I mentioned are all emerging out of different parts of the world. So we as a global bank get that insight, how each of these problems are getting solved in a sandbox, in an innovation lab, and how it comes out as the commercial value proposition. The second value or the benefit that we see is the sharing of knowledge across markets. So what works in one market, whether it is the technology, whether it is the product that we enable with the support of a fintech, or whether it is a problem or the failure that we learn, that is an opportunity that we see bringing that into other markets so that the quick we learn, we don't go through the same trap and failure and again and again. So I think that is the biggest opportunity that we see, how quickly we transfer that learning across jurisdiction. The last point is around the benefit that we gain out of these multi-jurisdiction sandbox environment to set a global standard. Because as much as we try to look at the domestic problem and domestic solution, we need a globalized standard solution, still addressing the differentiated model that we experience, whether it is the data privacy, the AML, KYC requirements. So there are still some big problems to solve, and that's the opportunity ahead of us. But setting the global standard by having exposure to the solution that we develop across jurisdiction is a positive way forward that we see as a global bank.
Okay, very interesting. And we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't talk about AI. So moving on to a little bit on the topic of cross-border and AI-driven innovation. So Mr. Singh, as AI reshapes fintech, how is MAS adapting its sandbox and policy lab frameworks to keep pace with technological change while simultaneously ensuring financial inclusion and sustained consumer trust in these complex systems?
Oh, interesting. So I've been on many panels this year, and we've spoken about AI a lot and all. I don't know if you are following the media discourse and all. So there was a certain shift in the last 3 weeks, if you were following some of the international media, whether it's the Financial Times or whatever else, where they were highlighting that people are all adopting AI because of the fear of missing out concept, the FOMO effect and all. But actually, where is going to be the revenue drivers, Where is the efficiency gain? All right, that one you may be able to quantify, but where are the revenue drivers and all that things? Not very sure. Now, then I wear my policy hat, so regulator and all. How do I balance this? People are not very sure, yet this technology has immense potential. I would concede that, immense potential and all. And it reaches a very inevitable outcome, but I actually have to wait and see. And why do I have to wait and see here? Because of a mantra that we believe in within MAS. Regulation should never, I say again, should never front-run innovation unless the circumstances call for it. We should never do it. So what are the circumstances that will call for it? If we see a massive market failure, you see money laundering risk, you see the financing of terrorism risk and all, now all those are circumstances that call for it. But ordinarily, these are all risks that exist, but they exist where it can be mitigated. So then regulation should not front run. So how should I then pivot my sandbox or my policy labs? I should not pivot at the foundational level, but then I should incentivize. But when I incentivize firms and all of these things, I'm incentivizing them at a different level. So what do I have? In the recent year, actually just this year alone, we gave out 3 labs. 3 labs where their focus is just pure AI. And that was their selling proposition to us and say, we will do pure AI experimentation, we will work with the various business functions and all of this. And they convinced us there was a strong value proposition there. So that is how we have pivoted. We have made sure that they are razor focused on something. Same for our sandbox and all of this. Like I say, for our sandbox, the regime is very different in Singapore. It is not a numbers game. We don't publish this, but it's not a numbers game for us. We are telling everyone from day one, if you're doing a regulated activity, go speak to consultants, go speak to lawyers and all, and become a regulated entity. Let's not go around, go in the sandbox, spend 18 months of your life there and all that things, and then make a decision. It's not very efficient, especially in this day and age. So I know time is running. The short answer to this actually is this: never, ever, ever pivot policy too quickly because you sometimes destroy innovation. This is something we have learned, and it's something that it's a take-home message for everyone in the audience as well.
Okay. And Mr. Ram, do you see cross-border or federated sandboxes as the next step for global experimentation? What practical benefits could they bring to institutions like HSBC?
Absolutely. I do see a great value in the wider industry to come together and solve the world problem. That may sound like a non-starter, but that's the opportunity I see, especially people in this forum, in this building today, are the right minds to solve that. We have seen, we heard gentlemen talking about the innovation labs and the sandbox. Those are a great example of how we solve some of the domestic problems, whether it is, a great technology put into real life use through an app, whether the banking industry coming together and how move money efficiently, and UPI is a great example in Indian context. So these are some of the examples of how a domestic problem was solved through an innovation lab. I think now we are at a time where a wider group of industry participants on the ecosystem, including regulators, banks, fintechs, even the consumer industries, e-commerce, the new age, in a new economy players, should come together and look at these problems in a multi-lens perspective. And it's not new. Obviously, we see the emergence of what used to call the GFIN, the College of Regulators coming together and look at what are the problems that we see. I think a couple of areas, or 2-3 areas we can specifically look into it. KYC, AML is a classic space. We have come a long way in addressing the requirements in the way we collect data, way we store data, how those data are interpreted to resolve any of the financial crime cases, remove false positives, to make money movement much faster and simpler. But this is not standardized across the globe. So for MNC banks like us, what would be the standard is to kind of come up with a model, not a single standard globally, which is probably a dream if I say that, a model that is interoperable and that is able to kind of come up with a global standard data context. I think we are taking some positive steps toward it by way of ISO format, ISO 20022. That's a good first step to kind of have a standardized data collection model, data storage model, and leverage the data to address some of these requirements. So the interoperability is one thing that I would see as a value that we can gain out of having a federated a college of or a group of innovation labs working together across geography. The other area that I would probably highlight is around the digital identity linked to the KYC. Again, like the data privacy is a big topic for many of the jurisdiction. We respect that. At the same time, how do we transfer this information in a more secured manner, relevant for the problem that we are trying to address, so that the individuals or the corporations who own the data or feel secure enough, banking industries across the world use that information to assess the risk related to the transaction and resolve as we move forward. So as HSBC, we work with big tech. We worked on a cloud-based infrastructure. So there are some evidence both on the private sector side as well as from the regulator side that we see things happening. But I think there is a big opportunity for everybody to come together. So yes, a federated sandbox innovation lab structure, looking into some of this common theme, like I mentioned, is the opportunity ahead of us and the way forward I see.
Okay, and finally, as we look to the future, say in the next 5 years, if each of you could tell us, from your perspective, what are the most impactful things that can be done in these regulatory sandboxes and innovation labs to maximize their efficacy, efficiency, and delivery?
All right, interesting. And the reason why I say it's interesting is in the next 5 years, it means that these are trends that we are seeing now. These are conversations we are happening now, because then they come into fruition in the next 5 years. And I will say something very interesting here. Quantum. Quantum is actually a space that is highly technical. You need quite advanced education, advanced degrees and all that things to actually fulfill that. But the banks, the financial institutions are not scared of dabbling in this space. There are two fronts to this. One is exploiting the speed and the new operating paradigm that quantum computing brings. Two is also the fear that quantum will break all the present encryption. So it is the opportunity and the fear. These two are driving conversations with us, such that actually within the last 6 months, MES, we have given out 2 grants on quantum to actually establish labs in Singapore by 2 separate financial institutions, and the use cases that I just highlighted from the opportunity point of view and the risk point of view. That is actually very exciting space. And it's very exciting space because actually the last word is not yet written on quantum. We don't even know if it's technically possible fully. We know at a high, at a theoretical level that the maths does make sense, but to make it practical and all of this thing is some time away. But the institutions are showing that they don't fear that and all. And I will say that it brought back memories, because 10 years ago, quite different, but 10 years ago when people were talking about blockchain and DLT, and at the time it was like, wow, this technology, atomic settlement, we were throwing all these words around. And we were throwing these words around at a pace that was quite significant. And today, actually, if you ask people, what are the use of this technology and all the things, and they can actually utter at least 5 use cases, 5 good, distinct use cases and all. So again, of course, DLT and quantum operate on different technological paradigms. I'm not going to say that one is equal to another, but I'm suggesting that the noise you sometimes hear is not noise. It's actually the excitement you hear. You have to peel the layers of the excitement, and there's something foundational there. And I'm seeing the next 5 years as these things all being coming to the forefront.
So maybe to add to that, so in terms of technologies, I would second that, I think. So like the interaction between AI and quantum technologies, that will be an interesting area of the future, because you could actually release significant computing power with quantum. So that will be interesting. I think I would make a different point. So I think what these labs could actually do, or what policy labs could do, regulatory sandboxes could do, is that they establish a new culture and a new way of interacting between government and business, which is in some way collaborative and in some way also more evidence-based than what has been there before. And I think as like now only looking at the European Union, but I think the experiments that we see at the moment with the AI Act, regulatory sandboxes, with the DLT pilot, these are like first steps to bring more evidence to policy debates. And I really hope that this actually gains ground over time and that policymakers become more interested in this class of evidence. Yeah.
Mr. Ram?
Sure. I think definitely the technology side is always exciting. And I see the importance of getting the problem statements or the use case or the business benefits, whatever angle that you look at as an opportunity or a challenge, is important for the industry to come together and define that very clearly upfront. Sometimes it's the solution that's chasing the problem, that we have seen it, and which is fine. I think there is nothing wrong in having the technology-led solution. But I think the clarity on the use case and the benefits and the value proposition to be clearly defined as one space, because that will convert what is an experiment, a successful experiment in a sandbox environment, into a viable commercial live product. I think we have seen many things like labs, we have tried a lot, and it stays with the lab. So I think the next step opportunity ahead of us is to clearly define what the business value proposition, powered by the technology, to come together and solve the real problem. So that's one. The second, in the broader context, and I touched on the point earlier, is around the standardization and the interoperability. There's a common phrase we use in India, the unity in diversity. So it's not something that we can clearly look for that one standard, but the standards that we agree as industry make it interoperable, makes the life easy across jurisdictions. So I think those are the standardization, interoperability, and the real life use case that we look at it upfront when we start the journey in a lab are some of the three focus areas that I would highlight. So we stay practical, we stay relevant, and use our imagination with the power of technology.
So thank you, panel, for the very valuable insights on what has worked and what the future holds for us. This is it, so we're on time. Thank you, folks, for attending the panel.